So, not too long ago, I came across an article talking about a book. We can specifically reference it or just kind of leave it vague. But the book it is the theories in the book in and of itself or themselves are not new. They're things that have been promulgated along multiple ways in the past in different books, different ideas. This one just kind of caught my attention. One, because of the headline and being recent news, but two, because it's getting more publicity than I recall previous books along this vein getting, which is no surprise given who wrote the book. But it got me to think more about what might be an interesting discussion. And so the premise of the book is that basically real men are disappearing, in a nutshell. And there are a lot of things that are either just kind of ad-libbed, anecdotal evidence, or cherry-picked data, things that are fairly, unfortunately, commonplace in what is treated as news nowadays. And the whole premise is just wrong. But beyond that, the core question that it got me thinking about was, what does it really mean to be a man in the first place? And it kind of spurns out of some of our previous discussions around gender as well, and just being decent people, right? So a number of topics that we've kind of talked around this concept and haven't really tackled the question from our own point of view very specifically. And that is, what do we interpret to be manly? And I think it's an area that I feel qualified enough to talk about. I guess we'll see. But that's kind of the gist of what prompted my thought process. And we can, if we want to provide some details about what exactly the book is and why it's so absurd, I'm perfectly fine doing so. I'll include the link for reference material as well to the news article. But I don't want to necessarily attack the book specifically as much as talk about this idea.
Yes, when I hear something stupid like this, I wish I knew more about rational numbers and mathematics and could come up with some sort of clever quip about how real men or rational men, I don't know. You might be able to venture to guess where I'm grabbing at, but I really don't know enough about it to make a good joke about it. But it's kind of an absurd thing to say that... I guess maybe that's why you call your book The End of Men, because it's absurd and it gets people interested.
Probably. I mean, there's certainly a clickbaitiness to it in a non-clicky way, since it's maybe if you bought the digital version of the book.
Right. Well, clickbait is a fill-in for page turner, or if it bleeds, it leads, that kind of mentality. But yeah, I think it's a great thing that the End of Men is here, because I kind of take that to be the toxic masculinity idea of a man. And I know that's not how he meant it, but if the progression of men in our society is away from the toxic masculinity part of our identities, then absolutely this is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I need to double check this too. I don't remember for sure. I know I've said book a couple of times because I kept thinking about previous iterations of this messaging. I think this one is actually a documentary, not a book. So I want to just clarify that in this case, it could very well be clickbaity because you're having to click on the link to watch a documentary, probably.
Yeah, it's a documentary called The End of Men, and it is a quote-unquote emerging health crisis.
I love one of the things that I do love about our current media options, I guess is a generic way to put it, is that you can be a documentary and be completely false. And it's something that I never actually thought was possible, because I always thought a documentary was supposed to be factual and providing legitimately researched and disclosed information. But this is not the first documentary to bring false information and be presented as newsworthy. One of the other...
I was going to say, it's the basis for his whole show.
Right. And one of the other notorious ones in recent memory is the one about mules, the election fraud one that everybody wants to point to, that's been debunked thoroughly as well. And I think it's also one that he's proclaimed as being good in the past. But one of the things out of all of this that just... I struggle a little bit with how to phrase it, because in this documentary and similar books I was referencing before, one of the key things they talk about is testosterone.
Yes.
And I'm not sure when or exactly how we got to the point of saying very specific things about higher or lower levels of testosterone make someone more or less manly. I understand the attempt to grab onto testosterone as a measurement because it is something that is rightfully part of male development. You kind of can't become a male without a certain amount of testosterone achieving that particular process. But that doesn't mean anything later that I'm aware of other than potential, I don't even want to say health issues, potential changes in how the body develops or reacts to stimuli.
So I think to say that the amount of testosterone in a human body is the definition of masculinity is kind of a folly. There's a number of ways that we can define masculinity, and maybe the definition is a conglomerate of those ways. Ultimately, something being like, do you feel like a man? If you feel like a man, then you can be a man. And if you feel like you're a man not in a man's body, that's also a thing. So I think that the health issues that he's sort of overblowing here are maybe issues where it's like we have men that have low testosterone, not testosterone is going away, and so we are losing our men. That's sort of how the premise reads, or the premise.
Well, so I think maybe this is a better illustration to try to kind of convey the thoughts without having the right terminology. When people talk about men and they think about testosterone, and when I say people, I'm meaning specifically these types of interpretations, the thoughts go to things like Nick Offerman or Chuck Norris, someone who is exhibiting very specific, tough, badass qualities in some fashion. That is not masculinity in any way necessarily. That's specifically a tough guy persona, or
it's a form of hyper masculinity.
I have problems with it even being considered masculinity, because it's aggressive behavior, and that's not tied to a gender. You could have Rosie O'Donnell saying the same stuff, and it would be coming across the same way, other than the fact that they would probably call Rosie O'Donnell a dyke instead of being masculine.
Right. And
I guess to kind of reel it back in slightly, that I think there needs to be a better way to describe that. But what that leads to, and why this whole testosterone thing comes into play, is at some point people have formed this link in their minds that someone like Nick Offerman or Bear Grylls, somebody who is doing something with their hands and rough and rugged, has or possesses a heightened level of testosterone. That's the working theory for why this is an issue. And on the flip side of it, if you are someone who has an office job or plays video games, they're saying that that's not a real man. That's someone who doesn't have the appropriate levels of testosterone, that kind of thing. And there's no scientific basis for that.
Right.
Even if there were, and there may be a correlation between someone who spends all of their time outdoors or doing physical activities versus someone who spends 50% of the time doing physical activities, I'm sure there's some correlation to change in body chemistry that you could point to. But it doesn't change anything about behavior or biological sex or gender or anything else. The two could be 100% engaged in the same activities for a hobby or general pastime. It's just one person found a different way to make a living. Like there's just no correlation here that I can wrap my head around, and that's where I struggle a lot with it.
Yeah, I was going to say, anecdotally, the only person I've known to have low testosterone, it didn't make him, you couldn't say, well, is he the guy playing Minecraft versus writing code for Microsoft? But rather, he was just tired and wasn't able to engage in certain activities in life that he really wanted to, just based on his body not making enough testosterone. And he got those hormones balanced and went to the doctor, got supplements, and then he's doing the things that he wants to do. But it didn't fundamentally change him as a person or as a man. So
I think that's an additional good point to bring up. Everything that I am aware of in the just kind of general health, fitness, well-being sphere of things is a number of supplements that promote or claim to promote increased testosterone production, and all of them are focused on one of two things: either energy and muscle growth and being able to hit some level of activity that you're struggling or plateauing with, or some level of virility. And that's it. So, and both of those are very much physiological functions tied to the production of testosterone in the body, not specific levels or lack of levels, other than just maybe not enough for sustained activity.
Right. And when the body has an issue where you're outside of that healthy range, like not too much, not too little, there are things that can be done to bring you back into that healthy range and as a matter of overall fitness. But to make this link between like this, physiological decrease in testosterone equating with the loss of manhood, I just don't see it.
Yeah, so going back to thinking about a couple of the books that I'd referenced, obviously not by name, but just referencing that this idea was not new. I even have one or two of the books because I was curious, and these were written in the health and fitness sphere. So if you think about general books around diet and lifestyle, that kind of thing, typically including a couple of workout plans as well. Like these were books that promoted or talked about something relating to either the mindset or concept of an alpha male, or specifically talking about testosterone and or metabolic activities, right? So thinking about it from one or two sides of a spectrum, same general kind of overall idea, but at least rooted more in an attempt at being or having a scientific foundation. And there was nothing special in those. Most of the takeaways were things like certain foods or substances consumed in excess can affect the body's ability to naturally produce testosterone. And so you had some scientific evidence supporting how to kind of modify or change your diet if you thought this was an issue. I thought it was interesting. I thought it also was something that I didn't really care about, so I didn't bother. But it was at least interesting enough to have that as an approach to say, hey, this is something that before you reach the point of requiring medical intervention, if this is a trajectory you're on, and it is caused by these things, this is how you can change that outcome.
That's pretty sound advice.
Right. And it's no different than a number of other ways to approach the topic or ways to approach health-related topics the way books have been written in the past. Like if you think about even things like the low-carb fad, I call them fad, the low-carb lifestyle.
You're totally right. It's a fad.
I do know some people who have sustained it, and I don't know how healthy they will be long-term, but if it is sustainable for somebody, I kind of give the benefit of the doubt on calling it a fad and call it a lifestyle choice.
Sure. Every fad can become a lifestyle.
Yeah, I do still believe it's a fad as well. But like even I read some of those because I was fascinated and curious about the ideas. Same kind of thing. It presents stuff in ways that if you take it critically or read it through it critically, you can gain some positive knowledge about how to navigate different foods or how to potentially work different muscle groups. But it's all still presented with this kind of overall theme idea that is either misguided or not really the point, which is, the low-carb stuff, not necessarily. It's specifically talking about losing weight. But like the others are kind of talking about a crafting of the ideal male in some way, even though they're not calling it out that way. The big difference between those resources and this documentary, though, is that this documentary tries to actually call it out and say, this is turning men into not men. And it's an astronomical leap of faith isn't even the right word because
it's a bunch of bullshit.
It's a huge leap from what is or has been provided in the past to something hugely detrimental without any kind of link between them.
I sit here and I've been thinking about how, I don't think it's very easy to get your, if you have a healthy testosterone level, I don't think it's easy to get your body out of balance, to knock it out of that homeostasis. And I think that if you have an issue with your testosterone levels, I think it's not easy to get it into a healthy range. And, and there's medical intervention that can be taken for, most cases where that's required. But what I'm picking up from the article that you linked was that this is a societal issue that's causing basically the idea that society for the past 40 years is creating a problem for human, something that has come about through hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution. I don't buy that.
It's an interesting thing to mention it that way, because if you expand the scope of what we're talking about to not be just something related to manliness and testosterone, to detriments on the human as a whole, regardless of biological sex or gender or anything else, just humanity. There are a lot of things that you could start to point to where that is a problem both physiologically and culturally. But I don't think you could pick any one of them and it be accurate, even in the short term. Like all of them would be hundreds of years of influence. It's
Right.
None of it
Right.
is like the past 10 years playing video games. And so following that, I would say yes, what this really is kind of the same thing we've seen with a lot of other conversations we've had, where you have a vocal group of people who are dissatisfied with the current state of mindset and willingness to refute a specific idea that this vocal group of people are adamantly referring to being set in stone and unchangeable and immutable, when the reality is anytime anyone, under any circumstances, looks at anything relating to behavior or social interaction or the disease that is life, if you want to think of it that way, as immutable and unchangeable, is full of shit.
Yeah.
Every day, we should be learning something new and evolving and changing. Some of those changes are going to be minute, and we won't see the ramifications of them for years to come. Some of those changes could be very acute and intense and completely alter our viewpoint and the viewpoints of those around us in profound ways from one day to the next. All of us are going to experience both ends of that and everything in between. I mean, it's a spectrum of behaviors. And so if you're dead set on, no, this is the way it has to be, well, then you already don't understand life.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.